UFC bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw and former champion Cody Garbrandt renew their rivalry at UFC 227. On today's show, we preview the rematch of the world's best 135-pounders. Dillashaw dethroned his former teammate back at UFC 217 to claim what was once his. Garbrandt now has his chance at redemption on August 4th, and the stage is set for the next chapter of this fiery feud. Hello and welcome to UFC Inside the Octagon. John Gooden alongside Dan Hardy back for this massive pay-per-view. Now, Dan, there are certain fights that you are really happy to see rerun. This is one of them. Let's get straight into the facts and the stats. OK, last time we were here, that belt was on the other side, and he should be smiling,
He should be smiling. He's smiling a lot in the build to this fight, so I think the future shots of him with the belt will be definitely a lot happier than that.
There's a lot that's going to be highlighted here. I'm just going to go with the physical stats.
Yeah.
You know, 1.5 inches on the height and reach. And why don't I just start highlighting these? Because they're all super impressive.
There's a lot of in UFC bantamweight history. I've got two on my side as well. I mean, we could have had this one, which is fine as well. 100% takedown defense is massively important in this one. I mean, he shrugged off one takedown attempt from TJ in the first fight, but I have to feel like TJ's approach to this one's going to be slightly more diverse. He's going to try and mix it up a bit more for Cody. So that's going to be an important one. But I mean, let's focus on these top two for a start. So obviously with Dillashaw, most wins, most knockouts, and most post-fight bonuses. But then supporting that, the greatest number of significant strikes landed. Whereas on this side, we've got the highest knockdown rate. So the difference is, obviously, TJ's not necessarily knocking people down a lot, but he's certainly setting them up with significant strikes to knock them out. Whereas Cody, he's got that one-punch knockout power. So even with a glancing shot, he's able to put people on the canvas. And even if they get back up, he's still able to, to continue working on them. He's a great boxer, but the power in his right hand is really the difference between these two striking, I would say.
OK, well, let's have a refresher, shall we, of the first fight. Let's take an overall assessment, shall we, before we really dig into the bones of this one.
Yeah, so previously in the bantamweight division, we'll go with that. I mean, this is literally just a quick highlight, because I want to really pull this apart. I mean, we got exactly what we expected from both of these guys. We got a very emotional Cody Garbrandt. We got a very relaxed, very playful TJ Dillashaw, who kept trying things, was confident to step into range, paid for it at the end of the first round, which was a massive statement for Cody, who then really obviously felt like, I mean, he even points at him here, he's like, yep, second round, you're done. And then the second round came out, and TJ threw a lot of high kicks, a lot of low kicks, but that one that landed just there was really kind of what switched Garbrandt's ego back on for me. Before that, Garbrandt was quite relaxed, he was quite comfortable in the second round because he'd already got that first knockdown. So he was moving around, he was quite happy to slip out the way of those kicks. But then, once the knockdown had happened, his ego was engaged and he was like, all right, come on, step into range again, I'm going to hit you. So the knockdown effectively played into TJ's hands because it got Garbrandt fired up again. OK, well, let's start with 0-0 and 1 second then, shall we, of this fight, if we're going to go into it in that way. And, well, let's have a look at the first look that they gave one another. OK. Well, this, again, we got exactly what we expected from these guys. So we've got Cody in the corner talking trash. You'll see TJ, he's walking back and forth. He's smiling, very relaxed, very confident, at least seemingly very confident. And when they come together, Dillashaw moving like he does, low stance, switching around, coming high on his toes, changing his angles. But then you've got Garbrandt that's just waiting. And what I'm going to point out here, there's the perfect opportunity to show you. What I'm going to point out here is that we know that Garbrandt's got a big, powerful right hand. He does something to tell people that he's going to throw it. And because Dillashaw is one of his old training partners, this is something he's seen a few times in the gym. He's actually paid for it in the gym as well, as we saw from that training footage that was released before the first fight. So let's take a look at this. Now, you've got Dillashaw kind of testing his range. He keeps moving in and out. He does a lot of crazy things with his hands as a distraction tactic. But look at that. As Dillashaw steps in there, you immediately see Garbrandt. He extends his stance. He sets his back foot ready for his right hand. And that is a tell that he's got, that Dillashaw is well aware of going into this fight. Because Dillashaw gets him to do it twice. He does it there, then he steps out of range and he smiles and he laughs. And Garbrandt even goes, yeah, you know the right hand's coming. There's an understanding between these two guys that they do know each other. So then, the games that would normally be played between two guys that are first facing off against each other, we're getting the second and third levels of this because this has already, taken place in the gym. So that I thought was quite interesting. You see him kind of shrug it off, and then the next thing that Garbrandt does to switch it up, he throws a kick to the body. That's just a throw-off tactic for Dillashaw, in my opinion, because Dillashaw picked up on the fact that he was setting ready for the right hand. So Dillashaw immediately knew that Garbrandt was waiting for him to step into range for him to catch him with that powerful right hand. And this is something that Garbrandt is very, very good at. Standing his ground, especially when he knows that he can take a shot from his opponent. I mean, here against Marcus Brimage, he was quite happy to stand his ground. He took a couple of shots, but in a 50-50 trade, Garbrandt's always going to feel like he's got the advantage because of that knockout power. And he's had it confirmed several times in the UFC already. When people have stepped into range, he's taken their best shots and then he's been able to put them on the canvas from it. I mean, he literally does just wade into the breach and throw in these big, powerful shots. But his technique's still very good. I mean, the majority of his power is in his right hand. His left hook, he doesn't throw it the same way that a power puncher would throw a left hook, let's say. But all the time, when you see somebody stepping in, if Garbrandt drops that back foot back, he's not going anywhere. And Dillashaw read that. Dillashaw recognised that. So there's a definite distinction between whether Garbrandt's going to stand his ground or whether he's going to back up and give you space.
Okay.
And, you know, this is something that Dillashaw has obviously known from years and years ago in the gym and played out in the fight perfectly.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. Okay, so Garbrandt made some adjustments, and let's get back to that first round, which was really good for him. So Dillashaw comes in with the body kick. Now, Garbrandt realises here that Dillashaw's starting his combinations with kicks. Now, it's important to note that when Dillashaw does this, it's usually because he's going to land that kick and then step in with punches. So Garbrandt's knowing that if he keeps moving out the way of these kicks, Dillashaw's either going to land in front of him in punching range or he's just going to stop his combination entirely. So Garbrandt then starts to take the kicks on his terms. So Dillashaw will throw a kick, Garbrandt will stand and check it and counter with a punch, or he'll move out the way. See, that was a perfect example of it, because what we see there is we see Dillashaw pushing forward, we see him throw a front kick to the midsection. Now, when this lands, that's just parried to the side. Garbrandt then steps and sets his back foot. His back foot's set, you can see that now. So what's happened is he's gone, okay, the kick's come, I've checked the kick out the way, but now I know Dillashaw's in range. So I know the next thing to come. Now Dillashaw's felt that contact on the kick, he's going to throw punches. So Garbrandt sets his back foot and he waits for the combination to come from Dillashaw, which, as we can see here, he slips perfectly out the way of. Watch the replay, you'll see it even better, because he knows exactly what Dillashaw's coming with. He blocks the kick, as Dillashaw steps in with the 1-2, beautifully slips to the outside. I mean, it was straight onto
a picture-perfect right hand. And that was such a big statement to finish the first fight. You can see Dillashaw walk. It's like, I'm fine, I can drive, I'm fine. He's got that kind of drunk stagger. You know what I mean? He's
trying
to exactly give me my keys, I'm fine. He's trying to build his own confidence up then, because I mean, he felt, to be honest, like his game plan was coming to fruition in that first round. He was able to program Garbrandt to an extent, but then paid for it, got a little overzealous, came crashing into range and paid for it. And that for him was just a reminder that no matter what happens against Garbrandt, if you're in his punching range, you're always at risk. So if we go back into Garbrandt's fight history, you're going to see this a lot. And this is the example in the Dillashaw fight, obviously, where he does it. He knows that Dillashaw's going to throw that inside low kick. And by making that contact with the low kick, he knows that Dillashaw's in range for those punches. So he's going to come crashing forward. And you go back into his past, he does this a lot of the time. Once he's got somebody backing up, that's his marker to keep going, to keep throwing punches, because a lot of the time he'll back him up to the fence where there's nowhere else to go, and then he comes over the top with that short right hand. I mean, it's a devastating punch. We'll see it again here. But I mentioned earlier about the left hook, about this is, you know, not the way that most people would throw a power left hook. Everything about Cody's game is revolved around that right hand. Look at that. I mean, that's a great example. He actually throws the left hand open there. It's more of a Stockton slap than anything. See there, look. He just pulls the head across just to line it up for the right hand. So in the knockout in this scenario, Dillashaw moving towards the left hook wasn't quite as dangerous as it would be against someone else, because he knows that he can smother the power of that left hook quite well. And it's just really the right hand he's got to watch out for. So all the time circling towards the left hook side is the safest thing for Dillashaw to do. And that's something that obviously he knew from training. You can also do research on Garbrandt and see the same thing. But that blast forward is something that you can guarantee that you're going to get from Garbrandt, especially if you land a kick on him, because then he knows that you're within reach. And that's when he will invest in that sprint attack.
So to underline that first round then, big round for Garbrandt?
I think so. I mean, I would even go as far as to score a 10-8 in that one. Not necessarily because it was a dominant whole round, but because he scored a big knockdown at the end of the first, which then clearly had an impact on at least the first minute of the second round. which to me, with that bleed over into the next round, you can see that it was a concussive blow that Dillashaw had to adjust from, which for me was a massive statement.
Yeah, OK. Well, let's roll on into the second round then.
OK. So second round comes out. Now it's a very different TJ Dillashaw in the corner. He looks a bit foggy. He looks a little bit discouraged. Garbrandt, on the other hand, wide open eyes, pointing in the centre. You're going down this round. His confidence was on a high then. So now he's not pushing for the finish. Now he's being a bit more playful. He's allowing Dillashaw to throw kicks and just allowing him to miss, staying out of the way, because now he knows that if Dillashaw lands a kick, that he's going to be in punching range. So that's what he's waiting for. He's waiting to engage on his terms. Now, even the takedown there just shrugged it off. It's almost like Dillashaw wasn't quite there in that first minute, apart from that knockdown. That was the point where Dillashaw seemed to switch back on. And if we go back and have a quick look at that, here it is again. So let's have a look at this. This is very Anderson Silva, Vitor Belfort. We've covered this on UFC Breakdown before. So you can see here that Dillashaw is eye to eye with Garbrandt, staring right at him. So now Garbrandt is looking at Dillashaw and reading him. He's being reactive to Dillashaw's game. So he's waiting for Dillashaw to make his move and waiting to read that to then counter. So what we see here, and this is beautiful work by Dillashaw, keep an eye on Dillashaw's face. So as this progresses forward, Dillashaw is looking in his eyes, and then there's a switch, and he drops his eye line down to the lower leg. So look at that, straight away. Now he's looking at the lead leg of Garbrandt. And the reason for that is because he knows that Garbrandt, if he's expecting that inside low kick, he's going to be defending the inside low
Sweeping,
kick. Exactly. Yeah. He does the old Yoel Romero, the old matador. He tries to pull it out the way, but what you've got to think that does is it brings your feet together and it brings your head forward.
Yes.
So it's a very unfavourable position if someone's setting you up. So Dillashaw has spotted this. He's feinted with the inside low kick. So as he steps through, Garbrandt reacts, sweeps away with the lead hand, and takes it right on the side of the face. I mean, it was great work by Dillashaw, but that to me is a signal that he's back in the game now. Now he's well aware of what's going on. He's well aware that Cody's being reactive to him, so he's going to set him up, and he did it beautifully there. But that also switched on Garbrandt's ego. He was like, right, I'm going to stand my ground again now. So he was waiting for the right opportunity, and this is where he thought it was going to come here. Dillashaw right on the edge of his punching range, edging over like he was going to step out, something that Garbrandt's seen Dillashaw do so many times. And a credit to Garbrandt, he actually reacted very well to that. We'll cover that in a second. I have an aerial shot which I want to show you. But look at this. So that's where Dillashaw throws the jab, and he knows that he's throwing that jab. I mean, you can see how short it falls. At the full extent of the jab, I mean, he's a good distance away from his opponent. The purpose of this was purely to force Garbrandt to move. It was purely to get Garbrandt to throw that right hand, because that's what Dillashaw was expecting. So as you can see here, as he throws that jab hand out, he's already moving off to the side.
Right.
He's moving towards the left hook, which he knows there's not a great deal on. He's moving away from the right hand, which he knows is where the power is. But a credit to Garbrandt here, he expects this. He sees Dillashaw moving, so he actually moves his feet and he resets. So he throws the right hand towards him. Now, fortunately for Dillashaw, he had his chin tucked and he took the punch in the right place, the hardest part of your head, the forehead.
The old gladiator movie.
Exactly. Just take it on the forehead and march forward.
Yeah.
And that's what he did beautifully. And because he'd taken the power punch there, he knows the next punch is coming is the left hook. So as we transition through this, look at that left hook stifled. And let's look at the arm position here. I mean, that's if you're putting somebody.
Well, he actually took it, but there was nothing on it.
There's nothing on it because whenever you're throwing a left hook, you need to make sure that the elbow's behind the knuckles, or there's no support system for the power. So here he's effectively putting himself in an Americana position. He's hyperextending his shoulder. So there's going to be no power on that because his shoulder joint is going to give before Dillashaw's chin. So Dillashaw takes that punch quite cleanly. Garbrandt's still in range, feels like he's landing punches here, so he's going to invest in another one. Steps out to create a bit of space for his right hand, and Dillashaw beats him to the punch.
And that's how you throw a hook.
It's beautiful, exactly. Knuckles down, elbow behind it. Really, really nice. Really, really good read by Dillashaw. But again, a good adjustment by Garbrandt. I can't ignore the fact that Garbrandt did see what he was doing and he did make that read. He is a very intelligent boxer. He puts the intelligence on the shelf when he gets emotional, though. And that's what Dillashaw was playing to all the way through this fight. You know, the whole psychological game is so important in this fight, more important than any other fight I think that we've ever covered, purely because these two were friends and training partners, and now they both want the same piece of gold. I mean, the stakes couldn't be higher, but at the same time, they couldn't have been closer friends than they were back in the day when they were training together.
So TJ was able to ride out the emotional side so very well in that first fight, but bringing it back to the technical side of things, his movement was so successful for him, as it has been throughout his career.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, his footwork has always been really standout. And if you see this is obviously something that he does a lot. It's something that Garbrandt was well aware of, and it already made an adjustment for it. But I just feel like he stood his ground one punch too long. I mean, I think if he'd have gotten out, if he'd have created a bit more space for himself, he may not have eaten that knockout punch. But so this is a better angle, because what you're going to see here is you're going to see Dillashaw, he's going to pump that jab, intending fully for it to fall short, just as a smokescreen so he can step off to the side. And I think what his intention was to fire the jab so Garbrandt threw his right hand straight, so he would be able to catch him on the counter with the straight left. But obviously, like I said, Garbrandt adjusted really well. So look here, you can see the jab's going to come out from Dillashaw. He's already stepping though as he goes. He's already off to the side now. Garbrandt does a great job of recognising that he stepped off to this side, and what he does is he readjusts his back foot. You're going to see that here, look. Boo, beautiful work. It's actually it's almost like a little taekwondo step that he does. He goes from here to here to kind of, you know what I mean? It's really, really nice work.
Not like a brush, like Western boxing.
No, there's no bump, there's no single step or anything like that. It literally is, he just readjusts his base, but again, sets that back foot, which is very important for his power right. Switches, sets his back foot and throws that. But, I mean, it was whiskers. I mean, any of these punches could have knocked them out, and we know that Garbrandt's got big power in that.
So exciting for the second fight, isn't it? This is crazy. It
was perfect. It was perfectly timed by Dillashaw, because he stayed in the pocket. He was off at an angle, so the left hook from Garbrandt wasn't much of an issue for him. So he eats the left hook there, but then comes back with his own big left hook, and you can see how much wider that is. He anticipated Garbrandt stepping out because he knew the right hand was coming. Garbrandt is a 2-3-2 fighter. He goes 2-3-2-3. Even in his sprint combinations forward, he always goes right hand, left hook, right hand, left hook. And the left hook is always to line him up for the right hand. So there was a lot of things that Dillashaw could bank on in this movement and in this fight to keep him safe. And that was just an excellent calculation for him. I mean, it worked out perfectly. He caught the punch cleanly. And if you go back into his older fights, you see that footwork over and over again, stepping off to one side. But oftentimes when he does it, it forces people to back up. They kind of freak out a little bit because all of a sudden their opponent's there and they're going to move back. They're going to give space, which what I want to touch on in a little while is how he starts setting people up for that high kick. I mean, it's a beautiful movement because he forces them back out of panic. And then watch this. I mean, you can see Soto's moving away, blocking the punches, feels like he's out of range. Drops his hands for a second, the kick comes over the top. So think about this. If Garbrandt realises that the mistake he made was to stand his ground, then he's going to start moving away and backing up. That's when he walks onto one of Dillashaw's kicks, which is probably part of the reason why he was standing his ground. Because he doesn't want to be on the end of a kick moving backwards. He wants to be in punching range, trading 50-50, because the power equation is always in his favour. So, again, going into this fight, there are so many things you can bank on with Garbrandt. You know if he's standing his ground, he's going to try and knock you out as you move forward. If he starts to move away, that's when Dillashaw can start looking at those kicks to bolt on the end.
We can't talk about this fight without mentioning the godfather of the bantamweight division.
Of course.
Dominic Cruz, who's a common opponent for both of these guys. An interesting one, though, they both approached it with a different mindset.
Yes. So let's examine this for a start. So obviously Faber got a win over Dominic Cruz way back in the WEC days, but then more recently he's lost twice to him. You know, Cruz was effectively the kryptonite for Team Alpha Male.
Yes.
His movement was unpredictable, his timing was unpredictable, his ability to cover distance was unpredictable. So the whole ethos around Team Alpha Male was to build a game plan that would beat Dominic Cruz. Now, Uriah Faber wasn't able to do that, but he felt very confident that they'd prepared TJ Dillashaw to do the same thing. So Dillashaw walks into the octagon, not only with the, oh my goodness, I'm fighting Dominic Cruz, probably the best bantamweight of all time, but also that I'm carrying the hopes and dreams of all my team that have already suffered 2 losses at the hands of Dominic Cruz. So he was more emotional, and we saw that in the build-up as well. I mean, you can see he's very confident here, but he's lunging, he's reaching for stuff. And this is what Dillashaw does so well to other people. He makes them miss. And Garbrandt the same. Garbrandt does such a good job with it. But he just got overzealous in this one. He was chasing Cruz down too much. He was exposing himself. And Cruz, you know, I mean, he effectively invented this way of fighting.
Absolutely.
So anybody else is going to be a poor imitation. But Garbrandt didn't get drawn into that. Garbrandt was able to stand his ground and land punches, but then knew when to disengage, knew when to play games, knew when to lighten the mood a little bit, and to try and discourage Dominic Cruz. You know, it got so playful that Dominic Cruz started to get frustrated. And then Cruz started to make mistakes, and then Garbrandt was able to make him pay. And again, he's quite happy to take a shot to land a shot. He's good in that equation most of the time. And he loves it. He likes to get fired up. He likes a brawl. You know, he doesn't mind mixing it up and taking a few shots. So, you know, whenever Cruz steps into range later in the round, you see him more eager and more willing to throw punches with him and try and look for that knockdown. Beautiful there, really nice. But again, it was a right hook. It wasn't a left hand. All of his power is in one hand, it seems. And I don't know whether that's because of his focus in training or because of the way he's just able to set himself to throw that right hand. You've got to think, though, if Garbrandt comes into this fight with the same mentality that he fought Cruz, he's going to get Dillashaw to miss a lot. And if Dillashaw misses, then he's going to overexpose himself, and that's when Garbrandt fires his right hand.
Maybe one of the best performances at bantamweight when Garbrandt beats Cruz.
Yeah.
And he got into that flow state. If he's going to perform like that, he needs to get into that flow state. He needs to remove the emotion to allow everything to chemically fire.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, we always talk about the psychological side and the trash talking before a fight. And I know there are a lot of fans that feel like it's unnecessary to trash talk, but that's evidence that there is a good reason to trash talk. Because if you can get someone to fight out of their comfort zone, if you can get them to take risks, to not think clearly and logically, like Dillashaw did to Garbrandt, then they're going to expose themselves. They're going to make mistakes, and that's when you punish them for it. I mean, it's a tactic that a lot of fighters don't understand and a lot of fans don't appreciate. But when it happens in such clear terms, you really can't argue with it.
Yeah, and the rivalry between these two has just been building and building and building. It's existed for the longest time.
Yes.
These two trained together. They were on The Ultimate Fighter together. They fought one another. This has been developing and growing. This is a bitter rivalry.
Yes, absolutely. And even before they fought the first time, the emotional part of this was the narrative all the way through.
Yeah.
Now, this obviously is after their first fight. Garbrandt's real happy. He's got the belt over his shoulder. Dillashaw's on the other side, not quite as happy, quite annoyed. But in all of these scenarios where they were facing off, it was Dillashaw playing the antagonist and Garbrandt playing the reactive, every single time. And Dillashaw took on this role perfectly. He was the person that was poking and laughing. You can see him here playing up to the crowd. Really annoying Garbrandt at how confident Dillashaw is here. And I mean, even chewing his gum obnoxiously. I don't know whether he's trying to annoy Garbrandt doing that, but it's certainly annoying me. And and when they face off, it's like this face here. You've got to imagine if that's your opponent, how annoying is that going to be that the guy's, yeah, of course, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you, of course. Because Garbrandt's such an emotional guy that he wants to know he's intimidating his opponent. And he's not getting that from Dillashaw. So then when they do face off, Dillashaw continues to play to that. He knows that Garbrandt's going to stand his ground because he's emotional, because his ego's invested in this fight. Like I said, you take the ego out of it, you put him into the Cruz fight, and he looks fantastic.
Yeah.
As soon as you throw a bit of ego in there, it becomes 50-50. And then at the end of the fight, obviously with the big knockout, look at this release of emotion. This is Dillashaw releasing all of the emotion that had been building up for weeks and weeks and weeks. Every time they faced off, no doubt it was difficult for Dillashaw. He had to bottle that emotion up. He had to force it down. He had to not get angry and aggressive. And then right at the end of the fight, he was able to release it all. It's beautiful to see. That for me is discipline. And now what we're seeing from Garbrandt is the same thing. He comes up, they square off, but he's not nearly as reactive. You can see the jaw flexing, but that's the only thing that's giving it away. Dillashaw again, open-mouthed, gum chewing. I mean, I could slap him from here. It's just, he's using things to frustrate Garbrandt. You've got to think that there will probably be a time in their past when they were training together, when Dillashaw was in the gym, chewing his gum real loud, and Garbrandt, probably weight cutting close to a fight, was like, stop chewing your gum like that. And it was just, it's one of those things that he was like, oh, I know him. I know the inner workings of him, so I'll pull that card out.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know all of these narratives. We
Sure.
don't. I mean, I'm just assuming that is one of them, but I know that one of my teammates would have gotten that reaction from me if I was weight cutting, they were chewing gum.
Yeah.
And I know if I'd fought them, they would use that against me. It's that brotherhood psychology that you can use. You can always get inside your brother's head much easier than you can, someone that you don't know.
Yeah.
Because you can push his buttons, where they are.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's underline this then, shall we? And look at the keys to victory for both of these fighters.
Let's start with Garbrandt. So the narrative for the whole thing is that he's got to stay emotionless. when he stays loose and relaxed and he doesn't get drawn in and angry, he's got great head movement. He slips and he rolls. His educated boxing skill set is very, very good. So if he can stay emotionless, he can start to draw upon that. And if he can make Dillashaw miss, he can set him up for takedowns, he can set him up for kicks. Ultimately, he can circle him onto that power right hand. Defending all of his takedowns is going to be a key, but that's no real secret. We know that Garbrandt wants this fight on the feet because that's where he lands the right hand. So anytime he can scramble back, anytime he can make Dillashaw miss, it's going to be great. But ultimately, the whole thing hangs on him keeping his cool, which we've seen him struggle with in the past, and which we've seen Dillashaw poke at him and draw out of him in the past. So, I mean, you've got to think Dillashaw is going to do the same thing again. And there were a lot of good things from Dillashaw in the first fight. The first thing that stood out to me is that he was opening up with kicks, which tells me that he was testing Garbrandt's reactions, whether he's going to move away from the kick and give him room to start to punch, or whether he's going to eat the kick and counter, which is ultimately what Garbrandt was trying to do. But, you know, opening combinations with kicks is really useful because it can force people back. And when he's confident to close distance with hands as well, and his opponent is moving back, let's assume Garbrandt does decide he wants to use head movement in this one, as he's pushing forward, he can always walk him onto that kick. This is where Dillashaw really comes into his strengths because he's so good at circling people towards his knockout shot. There are a lot of small games within games, changing of the eye line, looking at the lead leg to open up that target, getting a good read of Cody Garbrandt and knowing what his reactions are going to be when you do move. And same thing again with Garbrandt. You know what reaction you're going to get. If you throw a jab, he's going to probably stand his ground, which means that Dillashaw can then start level changing. He's so good at drawing the attack of his opponent to allow him to get inside and to start punishing them for it. And look at this. I mean, that was beautiful against John Lineker. Let's just watch that because it's so similar to the way that he attacks Garbrandt in that last combination. He flicks the jab out there, knowing full well he's got Lineker in front of him who's going to throw back. I mean, look at that big winging right hand that he threw. Effectively just gave Dillashaw the takedown. He was right in on the hips. It was really, really easy. So feinting, testing with that lead hand and trying to draw the attack out of Garbrandt in order to set up the takedowns is going to be really useful as well. And if you think you've got Dillashaw in front of you, and every time he throws a jab, you're not sure whether he's going to kick or throw a left or level change, there are several different options in Cody's head, which are going to force him to freeze up for a second and kind of, you know, he'll tense and he'll wait and he'll see what Dillashaw's going to do. He got a good read in that first round because Dillashaw, you know, he used a familiar movement pattern which Cody's seen before. But if Dillashaw can throw all of these things on the floor, Cody's got to stack his chips on one side in order to not get knocked out again. And that's where it gets really difficult.
You missed one for Garbrandt.
What's that?
Popping.
Popping, of course, as much dancing as possible. But, you know, you're right, though. If he dances, we know he's relaxed.
Yeah.
We didn't see a great deal of that in the first round, but in the second round, he was starting to do it a bit more until he got clocked around the side of the head with the foot. And, you know, then it changes.
That stops everyone
everything.
dancing.
That's it.
Yeah.
Kick me in the head and I'm not going to dance anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, will Garbrandt take back what he believes is rightfully his? Or, and this is a good one, Dan, will TJ Dillashaw make Cody Garbrandt irrelevant to the division? I love that line. We hope you enjoy the fights. We hope you enjoyed the show. Continue the conversation using the hashtag #InsideTheOctagon. Use the @UFC Europe handle and we'll see you next time.